Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthias, and I am the co-founder of Whispers. Now, let me start by asking you a few questions. Have you ever been to the ER and had to wait a normal amount of time to see a doctor? And when you finally get to see a doctor, does it ever feel like he's constantly on the run and barely has time for you? And have you seen similar headlines in the news before, and maybe yesterday? Doctors facing burnout, doctors spending more time with the computer than with the patient. I can see that some of you are nodding your heads by now, yeah? This is David, the founder of our company. He is an experienced ER doctor. But little did David know, 15 years back when he was graduating from med school, that he would end up spending over 50% of his time in front of the computer. Now, we are seeing similar trends for other caretakers, such as nurses, where they spend about 20% of their time doing the same thing. Studies in the US show that doctors tend to spend up to 70% of their time doing the same thing, documenting clinical notes about patients. We at Whispers have a solution to this problem, and our solution is in beta testing already. It is going to work as a plug-in into the hospital and clinical systems, meaning that it is extremely easy to implement it. Now, our solution is going to include all the latest technology, such as voice recognition, meaning that the doctor can talk straight into the computer and will automatically write down everything that he says. It is also going to include AI to recommend medical treatments. For example, create on-the-go requests for X-ray, blood tests, and so on. But the main goal here is to cut down the time it takes to document notes about patients. And we have set the goal with our solution at 50%. That means that when David is working a normal 10-hour shift at the ER, he will not have to spend 5 hours anymore in front of the computer, but only 2.5 hours, meaning that he has 2.5 hours extra to spend with the patient himself. Let's take Reykjavik, for example. In Reykjavik, there are 2 large hospitals. At those 2 hospitals, there are about 600 doctors working and 1,300 nurses. Together, they work about 3.8 million hours a year. Now, let's make some prudent estimations here and say that they only spend 20 to 40% of their time in front of the computer. We've seen more. And let's also say that we only managed to cut that time down by 20 to 35%. And remember, we are setting the goal at 50. Then we will have created an additionally 300,000 hours at those 2 hospitals per year. 300,000 hours that can be used to reduce burnout, that can be used to increase patient face time, and can be used to reduce the likelihood of medical mistakes being made. Market strategy. So we are basing our revenue model on licensing out our software as a service. We are partnering up with one of the largest clinics here in Iceland called Klinikin, and they are going to help us gain the proof of concept that we need. We've also taken the first steps in discussion with other clinics, both private and public, and we are really hopeful that we can implement it with them later this fall. Also, we want to go to those 2 hospitals that I mentioned in the examples before this fall and introduce our solution to them and show them how much they can gain from using it. So why us? Well, first of all, we have David. He is not only an experienced doctor, but he has also managed over the 3 years to come up with the MVP that we have today, meaning that he understands both the technology behind it and the hospital needs. Second of all, we can feel a vast support coming from the community. So doctors that are beta testing our solution now say that they want it implemented not later than this morning. Third of all, we have an experienced team behind us, a team that has background in medicine, finance, business, programming, and law. Now, we are also building an advisory board based on experienced and successful entrepreneurs. Building on these 3 foundations, we will take our product live this fall. We are the Whispers, and we let doctors see patients. Thank you.
Awesome area. You're working, helping people, really cool stuff. How complex it is to integrate with the hospital systems? As far as I understand, there are very different systems available. So I'm talking about like scaling. I'm quite sure that.
Yeah, really good question. Just to make sure that everybody understands, we are not creating a complete electronic health record system. We are simply creating a plugin that will simplify the process it takes to document down these notes. So we will work as a plugin into those systems. And it is not that hard to implement it because our solution works out of browsers. So you can basically use it on any platform, and there will be a single connection between our solution and the solution that is being, the solution that is being used at those hospitals or clinics. So the electronic health record systems that is being used there.
You mentioned that you sell to clinics. How do you charge for a product? It's a subscription. How much can you charge for it?
That's an excellent question. How much are we going to charge? So we haven't had our first revenue yet, but we are in the first steps of partnering up with one of the largest clinics here in Iceland, as I mentioned before. I'm not going to say exactly how much what our registration fee is going to be, but imagine the value that we can create, like I mentioned in example before, 300,000 extra hours at those 2 hospitals alone in Iceland. We are only going to take a portion of the value that we create for them.
And I have a follow-up question to this. It's great that you give doctors more time to see the patients. However, with the new trend of telemedicine and good companies like Kry and My Doctor in Sweden, if patients are unable to not to go see the doctor at all, that's even better, because now you're saving time of even the trip to see the doctor, right?
Exactly.
So the question there is, instead of just focusing on clinics and hospitals, these doctors that are providing healthcare from homes or offline and after hours, would that be a tool they could use, and would that be a significant additional revenue source for you globally?
Really glad that you asked that question, because we are not only focusing on doctors and clinics. Our solution can work as a whole. Our solution can work to reduce the time it takes to document, not only for clinics, but also for example, lawyers, sálfræðingar, psychiatrists, and so on. So, for example, one company here in Iceland called CaraConnect, we have been in discussions with them as well, and they are doing telemedicine. And they see that they could benefit greatly from using our product, because the doctors that are staying at home and are seeing the patient through the computer, they can also use our solution to document while they're seeing the patient at the same time.
And the very last part, I promise, is, with the movement of GDPR, own your own data, we live in a world that's global, and people move across not only cities, but across countries. So when I move to a different country, I have to find a new doctor, and it all starts from over again. In the future, if you own your own medical records, can you choose when and whom you disclose them, and also make sure that not everybody has access to them?
Yes, of course. That's a really good question, and to just answer that really shortly, we are not going to store the data per se, not to begin with. It's really hard to get a license or permit to store the data, especially here in Iceland. So we are going to be the input into the electronic health record systems, as I explained before, at the hospitals.
So not patient-facing?
Sorry?
So not facing the patient, but facing the doctors?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be facing the doctors. But of course, you might invent spin-off products later on. So, for example, patient is coming into the ER, and he might start by filling out the template or something like that, what happened, what went wrong, and then the doctor will see that afterwards. Might be a product that we can consider.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I have a super quick question.
Quick one, go on then, Magda. Just because I like you, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, because the healthcare industry is fairly conservative, it's not the easiest industry to sell to. So I'm just curious to hear which person are you going to sell to? I mean, for example, one good example that I saw was in the healthcare software space is someone that is selling directly to teams. So the decision is not as big, and therefore a little bit easier to take, rather than having a 1.5-year sales cycle. How do you think about that?
So where are we going to sell our product?
Yeah, to who, I mean, who at the hospital will you be selling to? Will you be selling
Well, the
to
whole organization,
the whole,
or as per se, yeah. Because we are basing our solution that the community of doctors will come together and they will help create those templates that I mentioned before. And together through that, they can also they can also reduce the likelihood of medical mistakes being made by working together as a community at those hospitals using our solution.
Fine.
Yeah?
Give it up for Whispers, everyone!
Thank you.